What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 144, and this is a review episode. We don't do review episodes too often. I've been focusing more on the interview side of things recently, but I'm really enjoying kind of getting back into some of the reviews. I've done one recently for NXT In Your House from a couple of weeks ago. That was with the other John Scott times two. But today I've got Stuie Palmer from Stu's Wrestling Podcast on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and we're going to be covering NXT Great American Bash Night 2 from this past Wednesday. So, Stuie, brilliant to have you on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. I know we've been bouncing messages backwards and forwards for quite a while now, but great to finally be speaking to you and great to finally have you on the podcast. How are you, my friend?
All good, mate. How are you? How's Tricks, Johners?
Really, really good. Yes, it's a lovely sunny day where I am. So, I know it's going to be a good day when the sun's out, and even better when I'm recording, and even better when I'm speaking to a good friend such as yourself, Stu. So, great to have you on the podcast. And like I say, we've come across each other's podcast probably about 6 months ago now, I want to say, certainly into this year, and we've been kind of supporting one another's podcasts and all the great work that you do. But let's talk a bit about your podcast then, Stu, because it is, as it says on the tin, Stu's Wrestling Podcast. So how long have you been doing the podcast for now, Stu, and what kind of inspired you to start the Stu's Wrestling Podcast?
It would have been, John, is January 2019. And the reason I wanted to do one years and years ago, but it never happened, never came to fruition. And a few years back, it was prior to my nan passing away, we had a chat, and she told me years before, why don't you go for it? But I wasn't in the right frame of mind personally and stuff of that nature. But yeah, January 2019, long story short, that was the genesis and the formation of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
Yeah, so just a couple of months after mine started as well. So that's pretty cool. And you focused mainly on interviews. Now, you've just dropped episode 40, haven't you? Which was your Ryan Morrill's interview. And I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts. I have become a bit of a fan, and I'm not just saying that because you're on my show. I have become a bit of a fan. Really loved both episodes of TJ Wilson, Tyson Kidd, of course, because we were discussing that, and really, really loved the content there. Big fan of Tyson Kidd. Loved your interviews there. Also with the likes of Tim Storm, Brian Pillman Jr., Ricky Knight Jr., and so many more. Like I say, you've just dropped episode 40, but kind of tell us about some of your guests. Have you got any kind of favourite episodes, and if so, why were they your favourites?
It'd be very hard, like encapsulating it as a whole. I would say they've all been brilliant. I know that might be the easy answer, but I've enjoyed them all in different ways, you know. Sicky Dice was a good one. It was quite concise. He was on the road. He was travelling up to a show. So I felt as if I couldn't keep him too long, but he probably would have stayed on longer, to be fair. But that's a good one. And that's about 20, 25 minutes long. I'm trying to think. So many, mate. So many, honestly. TJ Wilson, obviously, that was just a pleasure and an honour to get him on. Obviously, still working behind the scenes at WWE.
Yeah, I mean that was a hell of a get. I mean, I must admit, it was. I was really, really pleased for you when you announced that you had TJ Wilson, and you kind of met him before in the flesh over in the States. It might have been on a WrestleMania trip of yours, I'm not sure. But tell us how that all came about. And I know you've got a little bit of a friendship going with TJ, which kind of led to the interview. But tell us about how that kind of manifested itself into you two finally talking on your podcast.
It was off the back of having Barry Horowitz on, and it's to do with Good Times Guaranteed. They do auctions. They're a production company, and it all came about basically through Barry and Richie, who runs Good Times Guaranteed. GTG will get the plug in there as well.
Yeah.
So they facilitated the interviews for me. So I'm very, very fortunate in that respect, and just so humbled the fact that they've managed to help me out, you know. It's can be quite helpful in the net sometimes, Johners.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's not what you know, but it's who you know. Like I say, the TJ Wilson ones, it was such a good chat that you two had. You split it into two parts, and I thoroughly enjoyed both episodes. So go out and check them out. And then you had Brian Pillman Jr. on, Tim Storm. So some current stars that are really knocking it out of the park in their respective promotions. And Brian Pillman Jr. still a young talent, and like I say, he's already very, very talented. I know that you watch him quite a bit on MLW. He's popped up from time to time on AEW. But I mean, he's one to watch out for, isn't he, Brian Pillman Jr.?
He takes the business seriously. Obviously, his lineage as well through his father. I like that. He said that there is guys within the industry, in his opinion, that don't take it serious enough. But for a fact, he's very professional, knows what he's got to do, and it's like you say, he's mid-20s now. The only way is up, isn't it? And getting booked on AEW, wrestling on Dart recently. Good for him, I say. Good for him,
Yeah, he's just completely untapped, and I think that he's one of those that you could genuinely say the world is at his feet, and that in 5 years' time, it's going to be scary to think, how good he's going to be, or where he might be, or who he might be wrestling for. But I'm glad that he's getting some exposure on your podcast, and one that I'd definitely like to have on mine somewhere down the line. But have you got like a bit of a wish list of wrestlers that you'd love to have on your show somewhere down the line, Stu? I know you've got quite a few episodes in the can, and we'll probably talk about some of those in a minute. But any that kind of you've written down a name, you're thinking, yeah, I'd love to get them on my show one day?
I'm as much into the wrestlers as I am the broadcast side of the business. And obviously, we've had Rich Bocchini on, formerly as Rich Brennan. That's another recent episode. It was great chatting to him, so it was cool getting him on. But yeah, from that side, the journalistic side of wrestling, it's got to be Bill Apter. And Bill Apter supported me quite a few times. He's posted stuff on his site on onewrestling.com. I keep badgering him to come on, but he's busy. He said he will do it, but he's just a busy guy. Just keeps on going. He's into his 70s now, Bill Apter. And in my opinion, the greatest wrestling journalist of all time, hands down.
That will be a hell of an episode, and I'll be the first to kind of put that in my queue and listen to that.
That's who I want. That's who I want. He is top of the list, believe it or not, and he has been for a long time. So
yeah, definitely some really, really good stuff there. And as I mentioned, you got a few episodes in the can. So over the next few weeks or possibly a couple of months, what great content of my listeners or your listeners got to look forward to then, Stu?
I'll go like chronologically in the order we've recorded them, if I can remember off the top of my head. There is a lot. There's a lot recorded. I'd love to get them all out at once, Johners, but I can't flood them out, as you know. But
no.
Matt Jarrett, who runs the Super Clashes down in Cheltenham, that's recorded. That was a great chat. It's cool getting him on. He brought a lot of the New Japan guys over. AJ was over here as well for him for his promotion. And he books Scorpio, Too Cold Scorpio. And obviously, he was in the business. He wrestled way back in 1996. That's when he got his start. So it was an interesting story from Matt. It wasn't just a promoter's standpoint. It was him going back to his wrestling and stuff like that. Mike Drosy, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, John.
Yeah, I did enjoy him back in the day. I know that was back in the mid-90s when WWE were a bit of a low ebb and lots of cartoon characters, but I did enjoy his he's a big guy, he could move. I did enjoy his character, yeah.
Simon Hill, obviously, he's just rebranded. Keep It Locked, used to be Gone But Gold.
Yeah.
Simon, brilliant. Like yourself, keep in contact with you guys because we're all doing the same thing and everyone's positive and we help each other out. So that's another one. Stevie Ray, that's coming out. I'm trying to think. There's a few more. Hollywood from Glow, Johners.
Nice.
So there's quite an array of guests to come.
Yeah. And I've got to say, back in the day, we're talking 25 plus years ago, Harlem Heat were one of my favourite tag teams. I just love their look. I love their gear. I love their music. I loved it when they hooked up with Sherry Martel and she was their manager. Just really, really good stuff. And Stevie was, dare I say, the unsung kind of, part of that tag team. I think Booker T gets a lot of the credits, but Stevie Ray, he is a Hall of Famer, isn't he? If I'm not mistaken. So WWE Hall of Famer. So he has been acknowledged. He has been credited with all of his hard work. And I loved Harlem Heat back in the day, most definitely. But what sort of wrestling are you kind of watching at the moment then, Stu? I know that there's not everything on offer or available, but there's still some content available online, various streaming services, the WWE Network. But what's doing it for you at the moment then, bud?
I like to be honest with you, Johnny, I'll sit and watch anything. Obviously, you said earlier about me liking MLW, love MLW, love what they're doing. NWA Power, superb. I'm I'm not negative towards anything. I enjoy it all. There's a lot of criticism online. I just come away from it now. Obviously, WWE, it's trying to get the time to watch everything. That's the hardest part. But I try to have it quite a tapestry of the different promotions, and keep my finger on the pulse.
But it is finding the time, isn't it? It's finding the time to squeeze it all in, and especially when you've got so much fantastic content, especially coming out on a Wednesday, and like you say, you like your NWA Power and your MLW. And I'll be honest with you, I need to watch a bit more MLW and a bit more NWA Power than I do. But when things kind of get going again, I'm gonna really dedicate my time to some stuff that I haven't really had the time for in the past. But we're here this week to talk about NXT. But before we do, Stuie, where can my listeners find your podcast? Where can they see or hear your great stuff? And like I say, you're up to episode 40 now, buddy. So where can my listeners kind of find your audio or your video content?
We're on Spotify, so just type in Stu's Wrestling Podcast. We're on Apple. Obviously, we're listed on Podbean, so we're available on other lesser-known podcast formats as well. I've typed into different ones like Podcast Republic. Obviously, you know the score, John, is. We're on a lot of different ones, and obviously YouTube. I find I was speaking to Simon Hill. He said it's hard with YouTube getting the views because there's so much stuff out there. But obviously YouTube as well. You can find us there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much where we are. That's
all the major platforms, by the sounds of it, the same as mine. All the major platforms. But what we'll do is, Stu, and like I say, there'll be an opportunity at the end of the show for you to give us all of your social media handles. But we make sure that all of your kind of links are attached to the description of this show, so along with all your Twitter handles and all that. We'll do that a bit later on, but they will be attached to the description of this show, so just click into that and find out more about Stu and Stu's Wrestling Podcast. So as mentioned, we are here to talk about this week's NXT Great American Bash week 2 or night 2. Last week we saw night 1. We had a fantastic fatal 4-way match, elimination match to crown the new women's #1 contender. Tegan Nox won that one. We also had a very, very hard hitting match between two of my favourites, Oney Lorcan and Timothy Thatcher. We had the strap match between Roddy Strong and Dexter Loomis, of course, in that fantastic main event last week. Io Shirai and managing to beat Sasha Banks in that fantastic non-title match. But looks like I reckon we're probably going to see more between Bayley and Banks and Io Shirai, and possibly Asuka somewhere down the line, maybe for a future takeover. Who knows? But we're going to be talking about night 2 of the Great American Bash. Now, just before we get into the show, Stu, I mean, you've probably read a lot of things online, and like I say, you're on Facebook and Twitter the same as I am. But a lot of criticism of WWE and NXT and maybe Triple H counter programming NXT to go up against the 2 weeks or the advertised 2 weeks of AEW Fighter Fest. Any thoughts on that? I know Triple H has come out and said, well, it's just the storylines we were going to go with and the matches we were going to go with anyway. Being around like the 4th of July, Great American Bash is a good theme to have around this time of year if you're in the States. But what's your kind of thoughts on NXT counter programming AEW's 2 weeks of Fighter Fest then?
I didn't think of it like, but I don't think it has any bearing as such. That they're both doing well. Both promotions doing well, in my opinion. So was there a bit of an outpouring online about it, John?
Yeah, there is, and I suppose it's kind of always happened in the wrestling industry. When you look at when they did their first, was it Clash of Champions, or you're going up against a WWE pay-per-view, and they've always done it somewhere down the line. There's always been counter programming to try to pinch a few viewers. So maybe Triple H is being a bit crafty, but what it does do is it kind of adds a bit more excitement and a bit more brand awareness and a few more eyeballs to their product. And I think it definitely works over these 2 weeks. And of course, next week you've got the Fight for the Fallen, so AEW continuing with their mini pay-per-view themes. But we're here to concentrate on NXT, the Great American Bash Night 2. Now, this week's NXT, it went up against a tremendous AEW product. I mean, I don't know if you watch AEW, Stu.
Oh, I do, John, but I've got to be honest with you. I've not seen Fight the Fest Part 2 yet. Love AEW. Forgot to say about AEW, actually, because I watched that many. But yeah, I need to watch night 2 of Fighter Fest yet.
Yeah, what like I say, he's two great evenings, two great shows of pro wrestling, and yeah, he was going up against the likes of Jericho, Omega and Page going up against Private Party. You had the 8-man tag with FTR and the Young Bucks going up against the Butcher and the Blade, and the Lucha Brothers, of course, the main event, Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy. So there was a lot of competition on the other channel as well. So Wednesday night was definitely the place to be as far as I was concerned. But here we are covering the Great American Bash Night 2. And the first match we're going to talk about then, Stu, was the opening match. Candice LeRae versus Mia Yim. Now, this was only the NXT second ever street fight, or second ever women's street fight, and a hell of a match it was too. The match started at a pace. Even on the entrance way, Mia Yim attacked Candice LeRae, kind of reversing the roles. Normally it's the heel that attacks the babyface, but it was the other way around here. Mia proceeded to collect half of her local DIY store, by the looks of it, from underneath the ring. There was kendo sticks, there was trash cans, there was steel chairs, there was tables, there was even a table that was propped into the corner of the ring. No doubt that will come into play a bit later on. The commentary team even gives mention to the fact that Candice LeRae's history of fairly unorthodox or hardcore matches prior to joining NXT a few years ago. The two then fight out of the ring near a nearby refreshments table set up over on one side of the PC, and then they climb onto like a little gantry or a little platform where Candice attempts to suplex Mia off the platform down onto the table, but it gets reversed. Mia drop kicks Candice onto the platform down below and onto all of the fruit and all the bottles of water. This match was pretty fast paced and furious, with the two fighting their way back into the ring. Mia starts wailing away onto Candice with some kendo stick shots. LeRae even brings in more chairs, puts them into a pile in the middle of the ring. Then they both fight up onto a table which they've set up as a platform on the corner of the ring. There's some really stiff kicks here and strikes from Mia Yim, and she even places a trash can over Candice LeRae's body before hitting a rolling cannonball into the corner. We even see Mia Yim, she produces some brass knucks, and I'm sure that made William Regal put a smile backstage. But then both women battle their way onto the table that's set up as a platform on the top turnbuckle, when Candice LeRae, she manages to gain control of the brass knucks, nails Mia Yim. Then Candice LeRae hits a tremendous swinging net breaker from the top of the platform, top of the table, down onto the pile of chairs down below. Something I've not seen before, or certainly not for a long time. A hell of a move. Candice drapes one arm across the body of Mia Yim, and the referee counts to 3. So I really enjoyed this match. I thought that this week's show was bookended brilliantly with two fantastic matches. This was the first match of the show. Stu, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. I mean, that swinging net breaker was pretty awesome. I thought these two women really delivered, and some pretty stiff stuff in there, some really hard-hitting stuff. What did you think?
Absolutely brilliant, the way it ebbed and flowed. Obviously, Mia Yim, you'd say she's the face, but obviously it was quite cool her bringing the brass knucks out firstly, and not Candice doing it. Obviously, Candice used them, as you said, but yeah, just great pace, the match. You know, they both got a lot of offense in. I'd say it was quite level on the offense. True. So yeah, really good. And the table spot off the platform, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I was just zoned in for the whole entirety of the match, man. Honestly.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Good. It was one of those, and it did make you wonder whether they were going to have an old school food fight. When I saw the table with all the fruit, I thought that this is going to, I hope it doesn't turn into a comedy match, but it didn't. They used the table for it was there. But what I also liked after the match, the story continued with Johnny Gargano coming down, helping Candice LeRae back to the backstage area, and Mia Yim refusing help. And kind of, although she was on the losing end, she still kind of got over in a sense by refusing the help and making her own way to the back under her own steam. So that was pretty good. Then we get a match between Bronson Reed versus Tony Nese. Now, I've got to be honest with you, Stu, Tony Nese has never really done it for me. He's got a great look. He's got some good moves. I just haven't really bought into this guy. Bronson Reed, on the other hand, I like what they're doing with the big man. I think he's a big man that can move, and he certainly demonstrated that. The end of the match came with Bronson Reed hitting a frog splash, or a splash. A big guy, he's 400 pounds, and I bet Tony Nese felt that one, but Bronson Reed picked up the win from that frog splash. So pretty good match. match between certainly Bronson Reed is one they need to get behind for the future. I can see a lot in him. I think they call him the Aussie Zilla. But any thoughts on what went down between those two?
In fairness, though, again, Nice got a bit of offense in. I know, obviously, he was the heel again.
Yeah.
I was expecting prior to the match starting, I thought Bronson Reed was going to obliterate him, but Nice did get a little bit in. He got a little bit in the way of offense to Bronson Reed. But it'd be cool for Bronson Reed. I'm thinking further down the line, maybe if he goes up against Keith Lee, maybe for the North American Championship, further down the track, maybe. Two big guys going at it. That'll draw, I reckon. That'll draw the fans.
Yeah, and I think they've got some big things in store for Bronson Reed, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's. That would be a pretty cool matchup that I would definitely tune in for. And like you say, not for the top title, but for the North American Championship. We're gonna kind of talk about Keith Lee and his championships later, and where that might end up. But Bronson Reed could be on the horizon for Big Keith Lee. Who knows? And then we get a backstage interview with Robert Stone, the leader of the Robert Stone brand, of course, trying to recruit more wrestlers. This time he's trying to recruit Shotzi Blackheart. And after some unsuccessful negotiations, Robert Stone gets attacked by Killian Dane. I think he gets shoved by Shotzi, spills his coffee over Killian. Killian then attacks Robert Stone. And then the next thing we know, Shotzi's driven over Robert Stone with a tank. I loved all of this. I must admit, Killian Dane's gone off the boil a little bit as far as I'm concerned. Not a big fan of Aaliyah, but I can see what they're trying to do. I think the real highlights of this segment was with Robert Stone. I think he's really bringing back that kind of old school chicken shit heel manager vibe, and I'm loving every bit of it, to be honest with you. Obviously a very talented wrestler in his own right, but they're not kind of portraying that side of him, although we did see a little bit last week against Rhea Ripley. Shotzi Blackheart, big fan of hers. I think Absolutely. She's got a very, very unique look, a great wrestler. I've seen a ton of her matches, and I think they're probably building towards maybe a mixed match between Killian Dane, Shotzi Blackheart against the Robert Stone brand. But any thoughts on what we're down here? Do all four individuals do it for you, or what was the highlights for you of this one?
Going back, like you say, Robert Stone, he did it in TNA and Impact as Robbie E. Obviously, yeah. I'd like to see him in a match, just echoing what you're saying, but. As a personality and the character, very, very entertaining. The guy can do it. So yeah, absolutely. And Shotzi, it's all positive as far as she's concerned, and still in the early stages of her career. But it'd be interesting to see what she does.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really digging her vibe. I love her kind of gimmick, and her entrance with the tank and the helmet with the horns. Just love every part of it. But going back to kind of Robert Stone and the fact that NXT, they really seem to be kind of doing a good thing with managers at the moment. And they do seem to be kind of introducing more managers, where WWE traditionally on their main brands have kind of shied away from using managers. Where do you stand on that, as far as, obviously you don't want to overdo it with having too many managers, but AEW seem to be, hitting the nail on the head with the manager side of thing. NXT seem to be kind of heading in the right direction. Do you think it's good or bad, or where do you stand as far as having managers are concerned?
I think, if it's not done. It's not done like what I'm trying to explain myself here now. They should. I think it's not doing any harm. It's not doing any harm. Like you say, don't have them out every single match on a program. But go back to like the 80s and 90s. Your manager was prevalent. So I'm very much into the old school Johners.
Yeah, same here. You can't be, like the old school with Bobby Heenan and the Genius and Jimmy Hart, and they were traditionally heel managers. And I think that they're trying to get a little bit of that back with Robert Stone, and I think that maybe he will recruit a few more. Who knows? But I'm enjoying what he's doing. He's a really great personality, and I think because he's on screen every single week, I think they know they've got gold in him. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with him in the future. Definitely one to watch. But there we go. On to the next match. Now, I've got to be honest with you, Stu, this was another match I was really looking forward to before this week's episode. Isaiah Swerve Scott going up against Johnny Gargano. So I think that these two have probably had their battles before, because I know that they were both former Evolve champions. And obviously they both got recruited from Evolve, of course. But Isaiah Swerve Scott, formerly Shane Strickland, of course, on the Indies. He's been with the company now for probably about getting on for a year, I'd say. Johnny Gargano has done everything in NXT, and this was one match that they kind of built up quite quickly over the last week or so. Any thoughts or expectations about this match before we would kind of break it down, kind of regarding the two wrestlers, or kind of how you think this match might have went?
I was quite happy with it. I'm saying the same stuff again, but both got offense in. Obviously, Gargano went over, but it hasn't harmed Swerve. It's not harmed him as such. It was good match, good back and forth. Quite slow early on, wasn't it? They were working the arm. There was a lot of arm locks and stuff like that going on. Then it picked up. Obviously, both guys bit of high flying. I had a bit of everything really, Johnny's. And it didn't harm Isaiah. It didn't harm Isaiah in the slightest losing.
No,
they can build him.
I would have liked to have seen them put Swerve Scott over, to be honest with you. Okay. I think that it would have been a good opportunity for them to kind of really push the button on him, if I'm honest with you. I mean, Johnny Gargano, he's done everything in NXT. Yes. He's the first ever kind of Triple Crown champion. He won all the titles with North American, NXT, and Tag Team Gold. But the fact that they're kind of featuring Swerve against Johnny Gargano is a good thing. I'm hoping that it's kind of the start of a program between these two, because I think these two, given a bit more time, given a bit more build, could have a really good feud. And we know what Johnny Gargano is capable of when he gets his kind of teeth into an opponent. We saw that over a 2 or 3 year period with Tommaso Ciampa, of course. But I'd like to see them kind of start a bit of a program between these two, if I'm honest. I was a little bit disappointed when Swerve lost, if I'm honest with you. Now, I mean, the end of the match was pretty frantic, because I think that Swerve Scott went up to the top. He attempted a double foot stomp to the outside onto Johnny Gargano, which he missed. Gargano rammed Swerve into the ring post, hit him with a poison rana on the outside, which looked pretty sick, to be honest with you. A pretty cool move. Rolled him back in, hit him with his trademark one final beat, kind of slingshot DDT, and that was the end for that. But the reason I want a series between these two, Stu, is because I think they had good chemistry. The match could have gone a bit longer, but I think they're kind of saving something in the tank between these two, and I think hopefully they can kind of prolong this storyline and turn it into something a bit more special somewhere down the line. I'd like to see these two in some kind of gimmick match on a takeover, if I'm honest. And I think if they build it right, the next takeover is possibly around SummerSlam weekends, almost certainly from the PC, I'm sure. But I'd like to see more from these two. But definitely Isaiah Swerve Scott, I think that somewhere down the line he needs to come out on top, and he's a big talent, a very, very talented guy. He's, as you mentioned, it was a very back and forth match, and I think Isaiah Swerve Scott is a very kind of hybrid type of wrestler. I've seen him mix it up with high flying, kind of down on the mat stuff, some hardcore stuff. So he's definitely ticks all the boxes. I think he's definitely one to watch. But Johnny Gargano is a bit of a quandary, isn't he? Because he's been exclusive to NXT now for about the last 4 or 5 years. Do you ever see him going up onto a Raw or SmackDown? I know they tried it a couple of years ago. I mean, or is he just going to kind of continue doing what he's doing on NXT? I don't think he'll ever get to the heights that he got a couple of years ago or a year or so ago. But Johnny Gargano, where's his long-term future, buddy?
I think, John, is, in all fairness, there's more. Obviously, they've brought more guys up, haven't they? Obviously, people have gone up to the main roster. Your Matt Riddles and that. I mean, there's plenty of match opportunities for Johnny in NXT, matches he's never had before. But also, going back to your point, maybe you should have a bit of a longer feud with Isaiah, because there's plenty of mileage in that, isn't there, as we saw the other night. But I take your point, maybe he should have gone over in the match. But yeah, I think it'd be good to see him on the main roster, him and Ciampa. But how would it go? Would they get lost in the shuffle?
Well,
that's what you've got to ask yourself, where you can be mid card, top of the card on NXT.
Yeah.
On a 2-hour-a-week show, and how many pay-per-views a year? 5-6 pay-per-views a year that they do exclusively. So it's a bit of a iffy one for me. If they go off, what will happen to them, John?
Yeah, I mean, I do worry for the likes of Ciampa and Gargano. I think if as long as they're in NXT, they're going to be fine. They're going to be in safe hands. But then, how long before it kind of starts getting a bit repetitive with having the same feuds or the same faces on NXT? And how potentially different could it be seeing them go up against a different group of individuals with the likes of I'd love to see Johnny Gargano go up against the likes of AJ Styles or a Daniel Bryan. Can you imagine some of the classics there? And even some of the NXT alumni get Johnny Gargano in there again with the likes of Aleister Black or one or two others, Bray Wyatt. But yeah, those are the matches I want to see. But I do worry for their future when they do go up onto them bigger brands, the Raw and SmackDown, about how they'll be looked after. But we will have to see. It's kind of sink or swim when that happens. But then we had an excellent video package, and it was kind of hyping up the NXT Women's Championship match, which is taking place next week. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we had a really good Fatal 4-Way elimination match to crown the new number contender on last week's NXT, which Tegan Knox won. She's going to be going up against Io Shirai on next week's NXT. And this video package was a really, really good segment to kind of build up that match. I loved how they do these video packages, especially with Io kind of talking in Japanese. You got the subtitles at the bottom, a lot of passion in there, and getting to kind of learn more about the real Tegan Knox. So that's a match that I'm definitely looking forward to next week. But moving on to our next match then, Stu. It was Legado del Fantasma. I probably butchered that name, to be honest with you. But it's the new Latino Lucha heel faction going up against Breezango, Drake Maverick. This was a fun match for what it was. All 6 wrestlers involved. A big fan of those, especially Drake Maverick. I'm loving what they're doing with the new kind of Lucha faction and making really good use of Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza, who have kind of just been bubbling under, and now they're kind of part of a prominent faction along with Santos Escobar. But Fandango seemed to take a lot of the punishment in this match. He seemed to be kind of over in the heels corner, getting most of the beat down. Then Drake Maverick got the hot tag, eventually gets the hot tag, tries to get some vengeance on Santos Escobar after the various beatdowns that Drake has had at the hands of the heels over the last few weeks. But despite Drake throwing everything and anything into his offense to try to overcome, even hitting his trademark wheelbarrow bulldog, it all breaks down. All 6 wrestlers get into the ring, leading Escobar to getting the advantage and then getting the all-important pinfall victory from his Phantom Driver on Drake Maverick. So poor old Drake, he can't buy a win at the moment, and he seems to be on the losing end to Escobar and the heels. But hell of a good match. Like I say, 6 wrestlers that are fairly fresh to the eyeballs. We haven't seen a lot from them, so it's nice to see some kind of fresh individuals, some fresh action. I know Breezango with Fandango and Tyler Breeze have been around for years, but seeing them back on an NXT TV screens is always good fun. Any thoughts on what went down in this one then, buddy?
Like, just going back to the fact that Fandango was, suffered the beatdown. I thought you'd put Drake Maverick in that scenario. Obviously, the focal point is him. What's the other guy's name again? Escobar.
Santos Escobar. Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure it's that way round. Yeah.
To build, it'll carry on. Obviously, they'll keep feuding, won't they, for the foreseeable in singles. But yeah, it was what it was.
Yeah.
Good filler match, I suppose. They needed to put match in there, with that length of time. So yeah, it was what it was for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was a fun match. Like I say, they could have done it differently. Maybe it would have made more sense for the story to have had Drake be the one that was being beaten down in the corner and then make the heroic comeback. But he had his time to shine towards the end there, but it didn't quite pay off for him. I agree with you. I think that there is a lot more in the tank between Escobar, or certainly that faction, and Drake Maverick. But the good guy in the feud has always got to come out on top eventually. So I'm looking for Drake Maverick to possibly come out on top in a match. And who knows? I mean, Escobar is the current NXT Cruiserweight champion. Interim champion or not, he's certainly the champion as we speak, and I wouldn't mind seeing one more match between those two with the title on the line. That could be really, really good fun. And then we saw the re-debut of Mercedes Martinez, if I can not trip over my own words there. Now, we've seen her before many times in NXT. She even cropped up in AEW last year when she was between contracts, but here we got a glimpse of a new gimmick, She's still very badass and kick-ass like she was before, but she came across more menacing, more of a calculated character. I think she's always come across as a bit of a tweener before. Here, definitely more of a badass heel as far as I'm concerned. I was quite intrigued by her kind of her get-up, her kind of gear as she came out, quite Mortal Kombat-esque. With my limited knowledge of video games, she certainly looked pretty badass as she came out in her new kind of ring gear. But here she made very short work of Santana Garrett with a Fisherman Buster for the win. Any thoughts on Mercedes Martinez? I mean, have you seen much of her, and are you a fan of hers? And what's kind of the ceiling for Mercedes in quite a crowded women's division on NXT? Quite a crowded but very, very good women's division on NXT.
She's a vet, John, isn't she? At the end of the day, felt bad. Santana Garrett's a good talent. Obviously, it was just one-way traffic, wasn't it? It was to reach what is the level for Mercedes? I'm getting tongue-tied now. Mercedes Martinez.
That's the one.
what I don't know. There's a lot of decent talent in there already with the women, isn't there? So yeah, it's hard to see. I don't know. Will she get into title contention? I don't know.
I think that they do like to give, all of their women talent an opportunity, and they've got a very, very strong. I mean, the one thing about NXT is they've been very good at kind of rebuilding their women's division over the years. And they've gone through cycles where so many of their women's talent have gone up, whether it be the likes of Bayley, Sasha Banks, Asuka, Charlotte, and then they've rebuilt. It's happened again, and it's kind of a never-ending cycle where, because they're so talented, the women do get promoted up onto, or say promoted, moved sideways nowadays, because they're all meant to be on a level onto a different brand. And Mercedes Martinez, I think she's going to have a chance. She reminds me a bit of when Mia Yim first came into NXT. That kind of, she used to have a very street vibe to her. Now it's a slightly different gimmick. But she's a vet. She's been in the business for quite a few years. I like to say she's been on NXT before. She was in the Mae Young Classic from a couple of years back. But I think there's definitely a lot of upside to Mercedes Martinez. I'm interested to see where she goes. The thing with Mercedes Martinez, unlike some of the other women talent on NXT, she's got a bit of a dominance about her. She's got a bit of size difference as well. She's a kind of an imposing figure, not kind of big or overly muscular, but she's tall and quite menacing. She's got a badass look and a badass gimmick and badass wrestling style. So I think that they if handled correctly, and I think Triple H is very good at this, they're going to kind of do well with her, definitely. So watch out for Mercedes Martinez for sure. But throughout this week's show, we've had kind of clips of WWE legends like Mick Foley, Drew McIntyre. We've even had Shawn Michaels all kind of bigging up and talking about the main event, Stewie, giving their thoughts, giving their predictions on the main event between Adam Cole and Keith Lee. Now, before we break down the match itself, kind of what were your thoughts and expectations about this big main event? Because this has been built up for a while. I know for a long time, Velveteen Dream was kind of the kind of the prince to the crown, and that never materialized because of recent events. But Keith Lee, they'll be building him. But he's had a fantastic 12 months. If you think back to his performance in the Survivor Series last year, and that face-to-face with Roman Reigns, then at the Royal Rumble this year, and he's kind of face-to-face again with some of the big guys there, including Brock Lesnar. Now, that was a hell of a showdown, and they've put the North American strap on him, and they've been building him, and here we are. This kind of main event. Was this a match that you were excited for? What was what were your expectations going into it, buddy?
Absolutely. Can I be honest? I thought Adam Cole was gonna win the match prior to the match happening, of course. But just what a stud Keith Lee is. Do you know what I mean? He's just incredible. But I thought Adam Cole was going to win the match.
Yeah.
In the build-up and stuff like that,
I mean, up until Wednesday, he'd been the NXT champion for 403 days. Obviously, the record-breaking NXT champion, the longest reigning champion of all time. He's had a hell of a run, and he's looked pretty dominant in his championship reign as well. But I suppose, there's only so long or so far a champion can go before they have to drop the strap. But I mean, this match just kind of screams kind of big time main event, and it's such a shame they couldn't have had this match in front of 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 fans, or a big arena, just some fans to really appreciate this. Of course they had some kind of fans and wrestlers behind the barricade, not the same as we know, but we got the kind of the big entrances. So just like you would before a big WrestleMania main event, you got them coming out of their dressing room, walking backstage with the kind of dramatic music in the background to build up the tension and the excitement. You got Keith Lee, Adam Cole coming out, and then you had both wrestlers have the classic face-off in the ring before the bell rang, and you knew this was going to be a good match. So, I mean, just to run through some of the key spots in the match then, Stuie, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Cole got the upper hand fairly early on. The match went to the outside. He run Keith Lee into the plexiglass, which of course runs around the barriers around the outside to keep the big man down. He even ran him into the ring steps as well. Back inside the ring, there was a series of net breaker and rest holds just to kind of start the match. A slower pace you've got to build in these ones, but to keep the big man down. Keith Lee did come back, got a huge power slam for a 2 count of his own there. Adam Cole gets a 2 count from a backstabber in the corner. Cole, took a ton of punishment in this match as well, as you would expect, having a kind of the big man, little man dynamic. Cole suffering a huge inside-out superplex, which was really, really tremendous. Now, Adam Cole is probably, dare I say, at half the weight of Keith Lee, but he managed to kind of muscle him up from the outside of the ring to the inside and down into the center of the ring with that huge superplex. There was a massive sit-out power bomb from Keith Lee, and a huge pounce as well, and a second rope moonsault from Keith Lee. I did worry for Keith Lee on that moonsault. He did seem to kind of get pretty close to the canvas with his head before actually doing the final twist and connecting with Adam Cole. Cole recovers to nail his last shot running knee for a close near fall of his own. There was a scary clothesline spot from Keith Lee, turning Cole inside out, with Cole appearing to land quite awkwardly on his head, but it didn't seem to have any ill effects, certainly with the adrenaline rushing. There's another close near fall, but this time for Adam Cole with a Panama Sunrise in the corner, getting a close near fall from that one. Adam Cole throws everything and anything into his offense to try and put Keith Lee away. He even attempted a second Panama Sunrise, but Keith Lee manages to reverse it into a spirit bomb. Lee then hits his big bang catastrophe, gets and gets the pinfall. 1, 2, 3. So I think the match went about 20 minutes or so. It was a hell of a main event, but there you have it. Keith Lee becomes the first man to hold the North American Championship and the NXT Gold simultaneously. This match was pretty damn good. It's getting praise from all the wrestling journalists, from the likes of Dave Meltzer and so on. Cole trying everything and anything, as I said, to try and put the big man down, to try to overcome, but it wasn't to be. And Stu, we have a brand new double champ, a champ, you could say, in Keith Lee. The new NXT combines North American champion. A hell of a match. Give us your thoughts on this one, buddy. You must have loved it.
Oh, it was incredible, mate. What's a main event? And again, I sound like a broken record here, but it was good seeing offense coming from both sides.
Yeah.
Adam Cole, as you said earlier, Adam Cole got Panama Sunrise in, got a lot of offense in, even though he's given away a lot of size to Keith Lee.
Yeah.
It's just, I enjoyed it. It was good back and forth again. Sound like a broken record, John.
Not at all. No. But you're absolutely right. And it wasn't one-sided. And even Adam Cole found a way to keep the big man down with some offense on the outside. And Adam Cole, he put up a hell of a fight, but it wasn't to be. And after 403 days, Adam Cole drops the title. We have a new NXT champion. There were streamers, there was fireworks, there was cheering from the fans. It was a hell of a moment. And I'm pleased with the big man. And much like when Drew McIntyre won his title at WrestleMania, it's never going to be the same with no kind of fans in a real arena. But you just kind of hope and pray and keep your fingers crossed that somewhere down the line they get a chance to kind of still hold the gold and kind of celebrate what they've done in front of fans, hopefully in 2020 or maybe early 2021, who knows. But a hell of a match. Now, I've got a couple of questions for you then, Stu, regarding what we just saw. So Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era, what's next for that group then? Because a lot of people have predicted and been saying for a long time now that they're ready for moving on to pastures new, whether it be Raw or SmackDown. We've established recently that Adam Cole has another year and a half left on his contract. So much like the Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa situation, he hasn't quite got the size of a traditional Raw or SmackDown competitor. But, over the last 10 years or so, that's probably not mattered so much. But I think now is the right time for Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era to maybe go on to pastures new on a different brand. But what's your thoughts? What's next for that faction?
It's got to be a bit like a conveyor belt as such. I know certain guys are going to stay down there, but they've had 3 years nearly, haven't they? They debuted at SummerSlam 2017, didn't they?
Yeah.
When they attacked Drew. I think we need another faction on the main roster. I think it's crying out for another faction, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I would, if I was in charge of that, I'd be putting a Disputed Era into the main roster. Personal opinion.
Yeah, totally agree. And as I mentioned earlier, maybe it's an ideal opportunity for them to have some fresh blood like the Undisputed Era, and as I mentioned earlier, possibly a Johnny Gargano going up there. But I think that I got to be honest with you. I see Adam Cole as kind of like the new Shawn Michaels, and I don't know if that's a good comparison. I just think possibly as good as Shawn Michaels was in the peak of his career, Adam Cole can do pretty much everything. And he hasn't got the size of a Roman Reigns or the muscle mass of some of the others, but he don't need it. He's a great talker. They've got great chemistry as a faction. He's wonderful in the ring. He's truly wonderful in the ring. And I think that now is the time for them to kind of realize that and do something with him against some fresh. We saw what Adam Cole did when the main guys were stranded in Saudi Arabia at the back end of last year, and Adam Cole went up and had a fantastic 30-minute match with Daniel Bryan that was unadvertised, and got so many kind of plaudits from that match. But we know what they're capable of doing. He can do it in front of the mic. He can do it in front of the camera. He can do it in the ring against any opponent. He's proved that. So please, WWE, do the right thing. And if you do move them up to either Raw or SmackDown, please look after them and make them show what they can do. Because, people think, Roddy Strong and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, they aren't personalities. Have you seen them in their backstage segments? They're full of personality. They're full of, charisma. All 4 of them can deliver with anything that they're given to do. Don't treat them like the Revival and get them bloody shaving each other's backs. Get them doing something, meaningful to really promote them as serious talents. But switching the subject slightly to Keith Lee then. I mean, we already spoke about what fantastic talent he is. He's got it all. He's got the size, he's got the look, he's got the moves, he's got the charisma, he's got the personality. He can talk, he can sell ice to the Eskimos. He's that damn smooth. He really, really is. But how long before he's moved up onto maybe Raw or SmackDown because of how good he is? I mean, do you see this as being potentially a short reign because of what golden television he can produce?
You've got, obviously, you had Karrion Kross looking on.
Yeah.
With Scarlett Bordeaux, didn't you? Looking down. He's obviously next in line. He's been fast-tracked, doesn't he? I know he got the win over Ciampa, but he's going straight into the main event picture. Just going back to Keith Lee, I think there's plenty of match possibilities. I think he'll want to stay down in NXT and be like, on a long reign. But will he have both belts, or will he lose one, have the other? That's the dichotomy he's got, I think. What will he do? What will they do? Will he keep them 2 belts for a long time, or will he lose one? That's the way I'd be looking at it. How are they going to book it? How are they going to book him?
Yeah, and that's really interesting. When you mentioned Bronson Reed earlier being possibly a contender for the North American Championship, I'm so glad you mentioned Karrion Kross as well, because he was looking down. He has been a tremendous acquisition for NXT. He's been a phenomenal acquisition, and so far they've not put a foot out of place with Karrion Kross and Scarlett. Just everything about them is just ticking all the boxes. But it looks like they are lining up Karrion Kross to be the next opponent for Keith Lee for one or maybe both of the championships. Who knows? In my opinion, Karrion Kross is a future NXT champion. But my question to you is it too soon? I mean, you mentioned that Karrion Kross has been fast-tracked. Has he been fast-tracked too soon? We know he's going to be a future champion, but it is now too soon for Karrion Kross. I mean, it's going to be a tremendous feud no matter what they do between those two. But what are your thoughts?
You can only put the guy in so many squash matches.
Yeah,
I'd have to. You can see what's coming. Do I think other guys deserve it because of the length of time they've been there? Yeah, possibly so. But it's the character, isn't it? And he's obviously a powerhouse. It'd be good him getting in there with Keith Lee. Obviously, Keith Lee's a bit bigger, but it'd be interesting to see if it'll be him going for both belts, or Keith Lee will do 2 matches in one night against 2 different opponents. It'd be interesting. There's a myriad of ways they can book this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the fact that we're kind of talking about it and speculating about it, Stu, just kind of proves that they're onto a winner here. No matter which way they turn, they're onto a winner. If we get, but what I don't want, I mean, Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee, that's a pay-per-view level kind of main event. I don't want him to blow it off on an episode of NXT. Please wait for a takeover if possible. Like I say, SummerSlam is just around the corner next month. So in 5 or 6 weeks' time, we'll almost certainly get a takeover the night before SummerSlam. That would be a great main event to have. That really would be a really mouth-watering match. Will it be for one or both championships? Who knows? I'd love to see how they build it. I mean, you've got 2 very captivating characters. No doubt the promo work and the video packages are going to be off the charts between those 2. So I'm already excited about it. And in fact, I'm getting myself too hyped. I need to kind of calm myself down for a bit. Otherwise, I might explode. But Stu, it was a good episode of NXT. A very good episode of NXT. Some good matches. It was bookended by, I think, the 2 best matches on the, of the night. The street fight between Mia Yim and Candice LeRae was excellent, and then finishing it off with Keith Lee and Adam Cole. And one thing that you kind of touched on when we were messaging is, unfortunately, some pictures were leaked from the PC about the potential winner. Now, I think WWE were trying to double bluff people by saying there might have been multiple endings filmed, but as we saw, it was just the one ending that they used, and the ending that we kind of saw that was leaked. Are you kind of disappointed that such a big kind of ending was potentially leaked by somebody from inside the PC, considering that there's not many people there anyway?
It shouldn't be happening. I think the staff member has obviously sent that out, but it is out. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it, as well? The internet. But it was a bit of a shame. But obviously they block taped, aren't they? From a safety aspect for everyone's safety.
Yeah,
but it would be nice for it to be done live on the night, but that's just not the way they've been doing it. They tape it in the manner they tape it, and that's it.
There's always a risk, isn't there? And I did have one thought in the back of my head, thinking back to the old WWF and WCW kind of Monday night ratings one. I wondered whether AEW might have leaked the conclusion to the NXT main event, like was it Tony Schiavone did 20 plus years ago. But I know there's a bit of back and forth between AEW and NXT WWE, but I don't think they would have stooped to those low levels. But Stu, it's been brilliant having you on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. It's been an absolute blast to finally speak to you and have you on the show. But before we let you go, you can't be on the Wrestling with Johners podcast without us giving you an opportunity to throw out your social medias and anything you want to plug, any handles, any merch, and where my listeners can reach out and say hi to you.
I'm gonna have to find how I've got them listed on Twitter and stuff here.
Yeah, no worries, buddy. No worries.
Sorry, mate. Sorry,
that's fine. But I know that you, as we mentioned earlier, your podcast can be found pretty much all over every popular podcast platform. So yeah, go out and search Stu's fantastic podcast. Got so many excellent interviews up there. I am pretty hooked on your podcast, and I do listen to all of your stuff. But I know that you've recently joined Twitter. You use Facebook quite a lot as well. But yeah, you've got those handles, buddy.
I've got we're at Stuie P1 with it's a capital S, capital P, and then the 1. Everything else is lowercase. So at Stuie P1 on the Twitter, and then Instagram. I think just put Stu's Wrestling Podcast into Instagram. Come up. Facebook, same again. And then we've got the website, which is www.stu'swrestlingpodcast.com, and it's all interlinked in there. All the socials, the episodes, and obviously, like yourself, we're on Turnbuckle TV as well, on the free to see part of Turnbuckle TV.
Yeah,
Richard's doing a great job with us all on there. So yeah, it's
absolutely. You post all of your episodes and all of your links on the Wrestling with Johners Facebook community page. So if you just want to scroll through the Facebook page, the Johners Facebook page, you'll no doubt see some posts there from Stu, so you can kind of click on the links and get in touch with Stu and listen to his fantastic content. But Stu, you're doing a wonderful job, buddy.
And yourself, mate, and yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like I say, we just, as a podcast community, we keep supporting one another, keep helping one another, and we're all going to grow as one. But no, keep up the great work, my friend, and fantastic to have you on the show. But there we go. That's another episode of Wrestling with Johners podcast. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit that ever important follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're checking us out on today. Tell your friends and tell your family. Don't forget to kind of follow all of our social media as well. We're at @withjohners_pod on Twitter, at Wrestling with Johners on Instagram, and just search Wrestling with Johners on Facebook and you'll find our podcast community group there. We're nearly up to 1,000 followers on our Facebook group, so please press follow today and help us get to that magical 1,000. So thanks again to Stu for being a great guest and coming on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you all again soon.